Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of the Top of Off Cricket Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Henry. And with me, tonight I only got Sam because we buy Walter. He got things to take care of. Family comes first. He sends his regards. So, Sam, you jump in the group chat this afternoon. You said breaking news. Apparently you were listening to Mason and Guest, and you caught some new developments that was taking place in West Indies cricket, and it surrounds the current captaincy issue in the West Indies cricket team. Tell us about what you found out this afternoon.
Yeah, well, first of all, for me, Mason and Guest is a Caribbean institution. I think it's the best radio show in cricket in the Caribbean, or I could say the best cricket show, period, right? So every Tuesday afternoon at 5:15 Jamaica time, I try to tune in. So I'm going about my chores and I'm listening to Mason and Guest. And to my surprise, this afternoon, he mentions these. Well, first of all, I got on a bit late, like two or 3 minutes late. Not very late, but like,
Yeah.
And so I'm hearing him calling out these names, and I'm like, what? And then at the end, he mentions, these are the 6 players who would have interviewed with Cricket West Indies for the captaincy of the West Indies test side. Subsequent to that, he repeated the list, and so the list of players, this will be a shocker to people who haven't heard that list just yet. We have John Campbell, Roston Chase, Joshua De Silva, Justin Greaves, Tevin Imlach, and Jomel Warrican. Right? Now, I started off by saying that I regard Mason and Guest as a Caribbean institution, not just an ordinary cricket show. Simply to say that I respect him. He's been around West Indies cricket for a very, very long time, and he has eyes and ears in several places in the halls of powers in cricket in the West Indies. Yeah, whether it's Guyana, you name it. So I think there is some truth to what we're seeing here. So I'll start off with that.
So, wherever there's smoke, as you mentioned that, right? I say wherever there's smoke, there's fire. I like to say that. Because these things don't just pop up, somebody don't just pull it out to the ear. This is not no magic thing, right?
Right.
There has to be something to it for it to get onto the Mason and Guest show. First and foremost, right? Let me back up. The captaincy talk around West Indies for the last 2 months or so, I think it's gotten to the point now, if we have a list, it means we are in crisis, right? I'm suspecting that Shai Hope, they would have reached out to Shai Hope, and Shai Hope would have said, thanks, but no thanks, right? So now we treating this thing like it's a corporate job. You got the first round of interviews, and I don't know if they're going to have a second round of interviews.
That's what it appears to be,
right?
From the little I recall, yes.
Now, here's my problem, Sam. I don't know if it's a Cricket West Indies thing, if it's a director of cricket thing, or if it's a Cricket West Indies director of cricket and Darren Sammy thing, right? My problem is, if Darren Sammy can't look at one of these players and go, you're going to be my captain, we have a bigger issue in West Indies cricket. You understand? We have a bigger issue. I've never heard Australia going, well, this is the 6 names we're looking at, and we're going to run these guys through in some interviews. I've never heard England doing it. I've never heard Pakistan or India or New Zealand, South Africa, right? Because when you come in as a coach, you pretty much have an idea who you want to work with beside you. Who is going to lead your squad?
Right.
I know, we in the age of innovation and people trying to do things differently. And I want you to excuse my language for a little bit, right? Sometimes we just do till we do scunt. You understand? And that is what we're going here, so. Some people, even Nikki, we just often reference Nikki. Nikki used to say, you go pick till you pick scunt. You understand? And I think that this is what's going on here. I'm going to say this to the fans, excuse, in Guyanese, scunt is a cuss word. Excuse my language. Anyways. Now, if Darren Sammy was to say, Joshua De Silva, you're my captain, I have zero issues with that, right? Even though I don't think he's ready to lead the West Indies team, I have no issues with that. If he was to look at Roston Chase and say, you are my captain, I have no issues with that. Roston Chase has been around the West Indies cricket team for the better part of 10 years. Lots of test match experience, close to 50 test matches. You understand? Now, while some people are going to hit at his record, people fail to realize that for the first 3-4 years of Roston Chase's career, he had a phenomenal record. When other people were failing, Roston Chase was the man that was keeping the ship afloat. Right? You cannot blame a man for losing form. You cannot. Every player goes through that. I'm actually a fan of Roston Chase. So if they were to look at John Campbell and say, hey, I want you to be the captain, I actually have no problem with that. When we did the show a few months ago, talking about who we think should be captain, I even mentioned John Campbell. I mentioned Roston Chase as two people outside of Shai Hope who I think are good enough to take the reins, because these men have experience. They've played a substantial amount of Test cricket. John Campbell has had the privilege of leading Jamaica for a number of years. You understand? I have no problem with that. Now, when you're going to tell me Tevin Imlach, a young man who is trying to get his foothold into the West Indies team, I have a problem there because he hasn't solidified himself. You understand?
Right.
If you're going to tell me Justin Graves, I have a serious problem with that. Justin Graves right now cannot justify his place in the West Indies cricket team. When you're going to tell me Jamel Warrican, now I don't know Jamel Warrican as a person, but I personally think let Jamel Warrican worry about spinning the West Indies team to victory rather than captaining the West Indies team. You understand? Right. I think we got better capable players to do that. And if you're gonna look at this list, there are 3 people that I won't have any problem with, even though I do think there are better options out there. And those options probably would have said, thanks, but no thanks. I am cool. That is my take on all of this. I can't understand why Darren Sammy can't look at the player. He's worked with these players before. He knows these players, right? If he was to go back to Jason Holder and say, Jason, listen, I need you to hold down the fort for about 2 years. I actually would have no problem with that. You know? When you look at all of this, Sam, at the group of players that they're looking at and they're interviewing as reported, what are you thinking?
Well, I will say I was surprised, like I think a lot of people are, to see names like Warrican and Greaves. John Campbell, I can't say I'm entirely surprised by that, right? Wasn't my pick, but you know. And Roston Chase, as you know, in fact, we did a recording last night. Remember that?
Yeah.
When you guys asked about, you know, who I'm looking forward to do well in England and Ireland.
Yeah.
After you guys call all the other names, I said, well, I'm only left with, you know, I don't have much to call from. My guy is Roston Chase. So even though we're talking about white ball cricket, or we
Yeah.
were talking about white ball cricket,
Yeah.
you know, I still have some respect for him, you know. In fact, I always recall here at Sabina, people calling him in that T20 against South Africa last year, people were calling him test cricketer, right? But again, I like him as a cricketer. Can bowl, can bat. But in terms of the captaincy and in terms of these players, I think it comes down to Roston Chase and the Silva. Now, like I said, Roston Chase wasn't in my pick to begin with. The two people I had, as you would remember, are the Silva and Imlach. And then subsequent to that, I said, look, I gave the Silva the nod. He takes captaincy and Imlach takes the vice captaincy. But I think if we step back for a moment and we think about how Darren Sammy became captain of the West Indies, the argument at the time was that, you know, this fella can't even make the team as a player. There was a concern over that, right? But he was selected because of other attributes. So coming from that type of perspective, I won't be surprised if Darren Sammy says, look, you know, someone took a chance on me, regardless of whatever else. And I did well. And he did well for West Indies cricket. I don't have to go over, you know, his record as a captain, right? So I think that's the first thing we need to consider in terms of Roston Chase being there when the last time he played was what, 2023? Memory serves me right. That would have been his last
Test match.
Test match. I think was it against South Africa. We can check that, or you can check that as I talk. Right.
Yeah, you go ahead and check it. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, right. And you were right in terms of very early in his career, going back to what, 2016. He was doing well. In fact, if you look at his scores, you know, he scored a total of what, 500s in 49 matches, 90 innings, right?
Yeah.
But that was early in his career. And towards the last few years or so, right? 2023 going backwards, you see where there was a definite fall off, right? So the question remains again that, look, when you look at what he's been doing in recent times, and we look at what the Silva has been doing in the recent 4-day competition, you know, there's going to be some questions there regarding, you know, Roston Chase and what he's delivering as an all-rounder, right? So question mark there. But again, I come back to Darren Sammy. I could see where Sammy's thinking that, look, this guy has played much more matches than the Silva. And in fact, before coming on the show, you know, Cricket 4 would give you the total matches a person plays, right? So you have your test match, your ODI, your first class, your A-list, what have you. When you add those up for Roston Chase has 454 matches on this belt compared to 166 for the Silva.
Yeah.
So I recognize that the Silva is younger, right? And of course, in cricketing terms, you'd say, well, you know, come on now, Sam. You know, but I'm saying this to say too that, look, this Chase has much more in terms of match experience, right? And remember, in 2020, he was also selected as the vice captain of the test side, going down to, I think it was New Zealand.
Yeah.
Right? So, in terms of recent performances, in terms of justifying a player being in the team, right? The Silva, I think, has the edge, even though, of course, in my 13-man squad, I did put Roston Chase in, right? But nevertheless, I think the Silva has, earned his place based on what he's been doing recently. Of course, Chase does give us the spin option, right? So we can't ignore that, right? But that's where I would start. I think this comes down to Roston Chase and the Silva. I don't see John Campbell getting that nod for captaincy.
I have to agree with you that if that's the group that they looked at and they say these are 6 people that we're going to look at with regards to selecting a captain, the 2 front runners would have to be Josh Da Silva and Chase, right? Based on experience and leading their territories. Both men have led the West Indies A team. Both men have been West Indies Test vice captain. So there's a lot of experience there. I personally don't see Josh Da Silva as someone who can take West Indies forward as a captain, right? Yes, he does have all this experience. That's just my personal preference, right? I see Roston Chase as someone who can hold the fort down for about 2 to 3 years, right? He's at 33 years old right now. I think he still has a lot of cricket in him, right? And he's more mature now. He understands his game. If you watch how he plays, he understands his game, right? And that's the thing with West Indies cricketers. We are maturing later because of the little amount of first-class cricket that we play in the region. We have players maturing later, right? So I think Chase understands his game. He understands the international game. He understands the requirements. And he would be my guy. Other than him, like I said, I wouldn't have a problem if Darren Sammy was to go Josh Da Silva, right? Tevin Imlach, in my opinion, in about 3-4 years, would be the ideal person in about 3 to 4 years, providing that he cements his place, because I do think right now in the West Indies, he is the best wicketkeeper batsman. I do think he's the best wicketkeeper batsman, right? He's getting really good experience leading Guyana and doing really well, winning, right? He's winning.
Correct.
Last year from Australia, took the reins, took Guyana to victory, and that was no easy feat because Guyana were looking rudderless. This year he came back again, jumped in, did what he had to do, and you got to give that some credit, but I just don't think at this juncture he should be considered. You understand? And that's no disrespect to the young man. I think he's a phenomenal young man. I think he's a phenomenal cricketer. Right now, focus on getting yourself cemented in the team, on understanding international cricket, and then we look at you later down the road. No harm in that. He's still, 28 years old, right?
Yeah, I agree with you there. Of course, the one upside that we need to consider with the Silva, and this, by the way, is actually an argument for the Silva chilling a bit, and you say go with Roston Chase, right? I don't have a problem with that, even though at the beginning my call was, let's go with the Silva, given what he's been doing in recent times, right? And don't forget this breakout league with him captaining and all of that. I think that's deliberate to give him more cricket, to give him more leadership, and so on, to keep him in the conversation, right? And to bolster his CV. Yeah. But the thing is, the Silva can chill for a bit because he has age on his side.
Yeah.
Roston Chase doesn't. So if they go with Roston Chase, it definitely means that, look, they're looking for someone interim, the best person to calm nerves, to bring confidence in the dressing room, when the RCs come out here in June, right? And of course, with Tevin keeping wicket, right? The Silva can maybe become wicket keeper in time to come again. Because again, he's a little younger than Tevin, right? So here it is, you have a backup of sorts, who you're also continually grooming. And the hope is, based on what we've seen this season with the Silva, that there's that hunger. Again, I don't know, but being dropped in Pakistan probably lit a fire under his feet, and he's like, you know what? I got to step my game up, right? So some people might look at it and say, boy, West Indies cricket in a mess or what have you, but trust me, I look, I've gone through much heartache, so my thing is just the positives right now.
So you don't think that, I know you're trying to be positive, right? You've been on this positive train for like the last month and change. You know, when we talk about certain things, you go, well, you know, let's look at things this way.
Old age.
I guess it's old age.
Right? Yeah.
But you don't think if this is the case right now, if we're at this point where the coach can't look and say, hey, you're my guy. You don't think we're in crisis?
I don't, you know. I mean, look, there are things I have issues with when it comes to cricket West Indies, right? But again, given all the heartache I've gone through from the 90s, mid-90s, what have you, like I said, I can't help but, you know, I will criticize them when that time comes, right? But
yeah.
As I thought about it, and assuming all of this is true, yes, I don't know that I want to say that, you know, it's a crisis situation or what have you. Again, remembering Darren Sammy's situation, right? I can't justify Greaves and Warwickon. I'm not sure what's happening there, but, you know, and further to that, I'm not even sure as to the entire process. How did this thing work? Were there other candidates? We know, at this time, we know of 6. But what about the other candidates? You know, I want to touch on something, because, by the way, Chris Derring was also on Mason and Guest this evening, right? And we know he was in the news, or at least his picture was in the news this week regarding Cricket West Indies and that, was it $88 million in revenues or something like that? And I think he went on the show to really bring some clarity to that situation. One of the points he made was that, look, we're talking here about revenues, right? We're not talking about, you know, net of expenses, right? And in his own calm way, was trying to say that, look, the regional media was too enthusiastic to report this good news, right? I know what I thought to myself. Well, Chris, Cricket West Indies has once again failed, because you have got to get ahead of the news. You have got to stay ahead of the news by putting out proper press releases.
Yeah.
And follow it up with you know, a press conference. Why can't we have a press conference every 2 weeks, or as the situation dictates? Right? So coming back to this situation now, I don't know who leaked the thing, but we're a small society, it's Caribbean community, right? And it could be a taxi driver, it could be a cleaner, it could be a clerk. Somebody could have gotten this information out to Andrew Mason to say, hey, this is what's going on, right? Get ahead of it. Let the cricketing public know what you're doing. Let us understand the process of what you're doing. So that's my concern.
It goes back to what we spoke about a few weeks ago when we said there needs to be transparency, right? In this day and age, you don't need to hide things. Okay, this is what we are doing, right? You put it out there. This is what we are doing. This is the reason why we're doing it. And I think even if some people don't find it doesn't rub their palate well, it is what it is. But you would have done your job. You would have put it out there. The West Indian public knows what is going on in Cricket West Indies. You understand? And we're not like being blindsided by things. We still haven't heard Cricket West Indies pronounce on the ball tampering issue what really took place. You got two players taking them to court, right? So in the case of Darren and the expenditure and the revenues, he could have gotten in front of it and said and done some expectation management, right? Hey guys, look, this is what it is. Here's where we are. Don't get too excited. Anyways, we just wanted to jump on here. This popped off this afternoon, as Sam said on Mason and Guess. We'd like to keep our fans updated and in the know. That is our job here. In addition to having a good conversation about what is going on in West Indies cricket, right?